Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Mike Quadraro, and please make welcome from my friend and co-host.
Nope, there he went again.
Jeff Hervella. We were waiting to see if he was going to be here. Apparently he is not, but he will be here shortly. This is Mind Matters, breaking silence in legal spaces, brought to you by ACEDS and Windcroft Coffee. Visit Windcroft, that's WYNDCROFTE.com. Vulnerable conversations can often start over a cup of coffee. This is a space where we share some real stories and real talk about physical, mental well-being, addiction, recovery, grief, and of course, resources for dealing with all the above. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about being of service as a means to recovery and wellness. But first, Jeff, are you with us?
For now, guys, we're having some technical issues. I keep losing audio, so if I'm jumping out and jumping back in, it's nothing personal. So, hey, guys, glad to be here. Jeff Hervella. I'm excited for the show today. Good topic about service. I think the big thing for me with service, it started with in sobriety. For me, one of the things we talk about is you have to give it away to keep it, right? And the idea of like being of service to others to help keep your sobriety. And so I've got like a very strong program foundation where we focus a lot on service and being in action to help others. And it's this idea of like not doing it for yourself, but like doing it to help, you are benefiting from it, but helping others. Since our last episode, Mike, I got married as well. So
Congratulations, my friend.
Thank you. And so, we bring in the element of service and relationships. And one of the fun things that my wife suggested we start doing is having morning coffees together. And the idea of the morning coffee is to check in with each other. Sometimes we're running around and it's like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, ba, 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 ba. But to sit down and ask someone else, how are you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? And it's funny because like, I take for granted that we don't do that on a regular basis. So sometimes it's good to have a nice reset. Now, it's not always like a dedicated time. Sometimes we're driving around and we didn't have our morning coffee and it's like, I need to check in. Hey, how are you doing? Right? It's just a good mental reminder to check in and be of service to someone else. And then finally, on the idea of work, we get stressed out. We are busy. We are like doing our jobs, which in itself is some kind of service. But we're surrounded by people that are also doing their best and stressed out. And sometimes just checking in with someone else and being like, hey, man, how you doing? Like, we're working on this big project. Yeah. Work. But like just to check in and bring some humanity back into our jobs, which can easily be robotic and stressful and resentful, to just like sometimes every once in a while level set with someone and be like, man, I'm stressed right now, or I'm feeling great right now. Like, how are you doing? And actually meaning it. And then I'll kind of end with like, being of service, but also not waiting for your turn to talk. Just like actually listening and hearing how they're doing. So just kind of want to share some of those themes that are going in today that I was thinking about and mulling over. Mike, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing good, man. Hanging in there. And on our theme, I've always, no matter what is going on in my life, I've always kind of looked to work and charitable causes, and it might be just helping a friend or a family member, but to our point today, being of service. It's always been sort of I view it as a healthy distraction. There's probably a therapist somewhere who says, oh, you're just masking, right? But, I view it as, being involved in those things is something that's sort of helpful mentally, gives me perspective, and keeps me grounded. And so, being of service has been a big part of my life, always has been. Helping others is personally rewarding and helpful to others, obviously. So I'm happy. Let's get our guest on, because
Absolutely.
talk about service. Why don't you introduce our guest today?
Yeah, happily. And I'll just say this too, Mike. You being so enthusiastic about doing this show with me is being of service. What we do here, it's a small contribution to service. I don't know how many people we reach, but if we reach more than one, more than ourselves, like, we're doing a service to someone else. So this is pretty cool, guys. And so with that, Jen Williams is a great friend of mine here in Austin. She's part of the Central Texas ACEDS board. She's a board member at large, but she still plays a very big part in what we do. A very big creative force, puts together a lot of the ideas for us, executes a lot of the plans. And I know her also on a personal level through theater. Both of our children are in summer stock theater together. We actually saw each other last night at the preview of their Cinderella show last night. So we have a lot of connections. I got to know her and her husband Trey through their charitable organization, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but we've done some ACEDS work with their organization, and we want to keep doing that. And I just think it's a great opportunity. So I'd like to welcome in Jen and say thank you for joining us today.
I'm happy to be here. This is great. It's good to be sharing a morning coffee with the two of you.
Absolutely. So Jen, we'd love to hear, just kind of on this theme of service, kind of what your thoughts are, how you and your husband got into the charitable work, but really start wherever you'd like. Like, maybe it started way before that. Maybe this has always been a passion for you. I didn't want to steal too much of your story. So just tell us kind of how you got into this.
Yeah, so Trey, my husband, and I both grew up in communities of faith, right? And so that is very foundational to kind of who we are. Um, and particularly the concept of bringing your time and your talent and your service into community with others, right? So that has always been sort of foundational for us. Help where you can, do what you can with, there's a John Wesley quote that's like, do all you can, with all you can. And I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's basically like, bring everything you can to do all the good you can, all as much as you can. And that really, has been a foundational concept for us for our whole married life. And so through various twists and turns of Trey's world and his work, he in 2020 decided, I think it's time for us to found our own nonprofit. And during the COVID pandemic, we launched Ancora Ministries, which is a nonprofit that is focused on feeding kids. And it's feeding kids in Central Texas, it's feeding kids in Guatemala. It is all about food insecurity and helping to step into the gap where there are kids who need to be helped. The numbers are staggering and continuing to grow over the course of the past several years. I mean, so it's been 5 years in July that Ancora has been around, and started with feeding a small amount of children, like 50 kids, and last year ended with feeding almost 2,600 kids across Central Texas. And it is just incredible the amount of work that is done by basically a ragtag crew of volunteers, because Trey is the only full-time staff member here in the U.S. The impact is important, and one of the things that we have also tried to do, because we think that this is valid, and this particularly to this conversation, if you look at some of the statistics around like involving corporate partners, people who volunteer together as a part of their work are going to be retained longer. They're going to be more connected to one another. They find more joy in what they're doing. Like, there's just so much that is a benefit to people when they come together to help other people. So that's sort of the base of who we are and, kind of what we do. Questions?
Hey, Jennifer, is there a particular connection, obviously to your local community, but to Guatemala in particular? Can you expand on that a little bit?
I can, yeah. So Trey, in one of his past roles, was a missions and executive pastor at a church for 10 years and kids pastor. And so as a part of that, he started leading he was designated to be the missions focused person at the church. And so at that point, one of the missions trips that they took was in partnership with an organization called Hunger Relief International. And they went into Guatemala and just basically fell in love with these communities that are in a segment of Guatemala that is underserved by any governmental organization. So it is like, you guys, the most remote populations that you can imagine. Like, it's a drive to a place and then walk up a mountain for 2 miles to get to a place where they are trying to get water back to their homes. Like that's the kind of poverty that you're talking about there. And so he just fell in love with the population that he encountered and made really deep connections there, and has kind of built upon that, felt a real calling to do that work. And then here locally, the way that it started was just, he kind of looked around and said, there's a lot of hungry kids. And the program that they developed through the local school districts is they go into the school districts, and it's completely identified by teachers or counselors or coaches, people who say, I have kids who need food. And what they do is they come in and every week drop off what is called a backpack bag, which is basically an HEB or like a grocery shopping bag filled with enough food for a kid to eat through the weekend, so that they come back to school on Monday not hungry. Because, I mean, think about it. If you come into work and you're hungry and you're not able to concentrate, like if you're 8 years old and that's where you're dealing with, it is devastating, to your ability to focus and learn. And so he's now in multiple school districts in this Central Texas area, and it's just continuing to expand. So that's kind of the backstory.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Great to hear about.
It was fun when we did the ACEDS event. We got a lot of this history and explanations. So, sometimes you go to do charitable work in a soup kitchen, and you see, like, you're feeding the people right there, and it's like, okay, I get it. Like, this food is going to this person right here. But the thought that goes into the food programs for the local students, I thought was just brilliant. Like, even down to like the fact that you guys put the food in HEB bags so it doesn't look like it's a handout. The idea is to not bring a stigma to receiving this food and make it look like they need this charity. So it's very like sensitive to these students so they don't get isolated or called out, for receiving this help.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's a lot of shame associated with being hungry, right? Like there's shame associated with being, in any sort of need, and food insecurity is a huge one. And particularly because a lot of these school districts that we're serving are actually, what you would consider a fairly well-to-do school district, right? But there is always poverty. And so, it doesn't look like a kid who's, sleeping in a box here in Central Texas as much, but it does look like a kid who doesn't have enough food over the weekends because the parents are working 2 or 3 jobs, and, things are expensive and getting more expensive, and, it is just hard. And so there is a lot of thought putting into honoring the dignity of the people that we serve, both here in Central Texas and in Guatemala. And it is things like, going into the schools and saying, oh, well, you can't, putting it in a Ziploc bag, which is what they kind of started with, was clear and you could clearly see the food. And, then changing that to say, oh, let's put it in just a grocery bag that, you just tie it at the top and drop it in there. But it's also things like choosing not to do generics, right? It's not a generic granola bar. It's a brand name granola bar, because that is important to those kids, and that makes it more appealing to them and more likely that they will continue to participate in a program and really eat the food that we're providing them, so that they can come into the next week ready to learn and, healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that idea of taking it one step further, and it's not about the organization and what the organization does. It truly is about what the student needs, what the
That's right.
individual needs. And that's, like, to me, the truest sense of service. You're actually focusing on what's best for the students and the kids. Can you talk a little bit about Guatemala? Because when we were there, Trey was giving us a tour. He showed us a lot of pictures, a lot of the villages, a lot of the children that he's helped. And you could see, like, the emotion on both of your faces as you talked about Guatemala. And there's a special place in your guys' heart. Can you talk about a little bit about what you guys do down there?
Yeah, so in Guatemala, it's a little bit different, right? I mean, there is, you know, a long history of kids who are malnourished, but it doesn't exactly look like, kind of the things that you might picture as, starving kids, like that we've all grown up with, Feed the World, and whatnot. It is more kids who they are receiving food, right? Like their parents may be feeding them beans and corn every day, but they are not getting the nourishment that they need, right? So if you think about what our kids here eat or what we eat in a daily basis, like you grab a cereal box off of a shelf and it's enriched with all kinds of things that are vitamins and nutrients that we get that they are not getting. So a lot of the time what malnourishment looks like there is that it is just not the right things. So there's a couple of different factors that go into the program in Guatemala. And the first one is a product called Chispoditos, which means little sparks, which I'll tie back to another story in a second. So the Chispoditos is a corn-based product that is made in Guatemala, and it is a nutrient. It's basically like a multivitamin that they can sprinkle over whatever food they already have or mix into, like they often eat a corn-based, almost like a porridge called otole. Like it's not oatmeal, but it's sort of, like that. And so they'll mix it in the otole and give it to the kids. And so what that does is that it increases their capacity for getting good things into their systems. So this is one of the first foundational pieces, because what the science of nutrition tells you is that if children in the first 2 years of their life don't get a certain amount of nutrition, then it drastically reduces their capacity for their entire life, right? Like, and if you see the brain scans, one of Trey's most effective visuals is a brain scan, and like a brain scan of a malnourished child is like about this big, and a brain scan of a normal 2-year-old is about this big. Like the capacity is huge, and that capacity is set by around 2 years old. So think about that. Like if you year over year, generation over generation have historic poverty that impacts the ability to be nourished and to be truly developing into the best that you can be, then that's limiting an entire population in a country, in a village, in a community that is just incredibly, it just honestly makes me sad to think about how limited that makes some of those kids. And so year over year, what we want to see is healthier kids who get a better head start, so that they at least have the ability to grow into their best self, right? And then the second part of that is we go in after a nutrition program with clean water filters. We can buy here in the United States a water filter that costs $50 that will last for 10 years for them, because the water that they're drinking is, they don't have electricity, they don't have plumbing. Everything flows down the mountain into the water that they are using for all things. They're drinking it, animals are drinking it, everyone is bathing in it. It's flowing through the coffee plantations. Like you're getting all of everything that you can think of that is gross goes into that water. So if you're, drinking that water and not able to retain good nourishment because you're now getting a parasite from that water, like it's just this cycle of malnourishment that is really hard to break. So partnering the effectiveness of like the children's Chispoditos program and the feeding program, and they do come in every month and do a weigh and measure to make sure that the kids are gaining progress. Like the volunteer and staff team in Guatemala does that work every month in all of the villages that Ancora is serving. So then we partner that with the water filter. And then there are some other projects that are going on, like helping some of the villages build latrines that are, recyclable latrines and just different things like that that kind of touch on the concept of taking care of communities holistically. So that's the Guatemala side of the world for us.
And this is incredibly invaluable. I mean, it's just, it never ceases to amaze me how I think we as Americans, wealthy or not, even we take for granted so much of sort of the infrastructure that we have to just make sure we have clean drinking water.
Oh gosh, yes.
And that is not the case in many places in the world. And I think that's a real awakening for some. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, no, it's again, it's kind of refreshing to hear like how you guys saw the problem through their eyes and met them where they were. It's not trying to change, not trying to, come in and be the savior. It's more of a service to the villages, service to the children. My goodness, like starting with the kids and just focusing on the development so their brains can develop properly. Like that's such a foundational thing that I would not even think of. Like that's just an amazing place to start.
Well, and it is a partnership. Like we in Guatemala, we only go into villages or communities where they are willing to partner with us. So they have to commit to being willing to bring their kids to the Weigh and Measure. They have to commit to doing, some additional work to help organize, the daily work of distribution of the Chispeditos product. Like they are committed also, so that it is, again, it's a partnership. It's a part here in Texas, it's a partnership with school districts. In Guatemala, it's a partnership with the communities, because again, like this is not a large organization, y'all. Like we are completely founded and funded by people giving $5, $10, $15 a month, and some grants that Trey has hustled to get. We're trying to begin building some corporate partnerships. We're trying to begin getting some, more consistent, larger sources of funding. But this is an organization run by my husband on a full-time basis, one part-time employee here in the US, and a whole bunch of volunteers. And in Guatemala, we have 2 employees and a whole bunch of volunteers. And we're serving 19 communities in Guatemala now, and 3 consistent school districts here as of last year. No, 4 consistent school districts as of last year, plus some different kinds of charter schools and things like that. And Jeff, I'll tell you, because, everybody knows how large Austin ISD is, I think. And they approached Trey at the end of last year and said, we want you to come into all of our schools.
Oh,
so
wow.
that is a huge, ask and a huge funding goal, and something that we hope to be able to do. But if you look at like cost of what that takes to feed a kid for a year, right now it's about $200 per kid for the whole year, because he's a part of a co-op that does this same type of work in other places, like out of Amarillo and out of San Marcos and out of like different places across Texas and the US, that they come together to like maximize their buying power, again, to create a bigger community doing good, who can make a better impact. Like, and that, I think that is one of the things that I would emphasize to people as well. Like, you don't have to be by yourself. That there are so many places for people to get involved, to be a part of a community. And we are always, always, always going to do more good when we are working together than if we're trying to do it by ourselves. So I think that to me is one of the most important things about like focusing back to your wellness efforts. Like that's get involved in something that is doing good, because it will help you just as much as it's helping other people, but we can also be more effective when we are doing good together. So, all right, that's
it makes not just for a well-rounded individual, it makes for a well-rounded community. And I think that's the key here. Jennifer, one of the things we like to do, because we're nothing if not resourceful, is suggest various resources to people. If someone wants to get involved, how can they do that? I know we posted a link to the site, but is there more? Can people get involved? And do you have any other resources that might be of use to people in the space in which you're operating?
Yeah, I would say, look around for food insecurity programs. If you want to get involved with Ancora specifically, message me, message my husband, Trey. We're both relatively active on LinkedIn. I'm not the greatest about it, but I'll try and do better. But Ancora Ministries is the place to go. And, I think if that's not the one for you, friends, then find some place around you, because there are tons of kids who need your, help. There are tons of good places that you can volunteer, and don't try to go it alone. Like, just reach out to somebody and say, hey, this is on my heart, or this is on my mind. How can I help? How can I get involved? I guarantee you there's not a single nonprofit on the planet who would say, nah, go ahead. We don't need
Yeah, and it doesn't need to be about like food insecurity. It could be about something else. Mental health.
whatever is all in your heart. Exactly.
Yeah. Just your kind of typical big brother, big sister situations, right? Where someone just needs a mentor for some career guidance or something like that. Yeah. Jeff, closing thoughts as we approach the half-hour mark.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jen, thank you very much. I love the comment you made to tie it back to, because we do post this on LinkedIn and then various resources, but we're ACEDS, we're a professional organization. I love your comment about how charity can bring coworkers together, and the statistics show that the corporate partners help retain employees better if they're engaged and involved, help give them maybe a better sense of purpose with the company, a better sense of direction with the company. I think there's no shortage of benefits from getting involved with charity, and like we were saying, with tying into the mental wellness. If I can just get outside of my own head and think about someone else, help someone else, and not do it so I can look better, but if I can just help someone else, even if it just comes down, like I was opening up with, just to check it in with someone else. There's big grand gestures, there's organizations you get involved with. You can also just take the moment to just check in with someone and see how they're doing. So anything goes a long way, and I think it all ties into the wellness and the well-being we try to promote on the show. So
It all
really great
counts.
conversation. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks, guys.
Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us, and certainly thank your husband, Trey, please, and keep doing the good work that you're doing. We appreciate it. Jeff, we typically close out with some well wishes for folks. I hope everyone's having a great summer, and just remember, folks, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Keep showing up for one another. You'll be
Amen.
better.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And thanks for joining us on this journey, guys. One step at a time. We're with you, and thank you. All right, guys.